Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Compass Coffee Talk. Today, on our 46th episode, we're joined by Missy Hughes, a longtime colleague, friend, a pioneering executive from the natural and organic products industry, former CEO and secretary of the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation, where she served in the cabinet of Governor Tony Evers, now about to complete his second term as governor of Wisconsin. And Missy is currently candidate in a crowded Democratic field, I believe, for governor of Wisconsin. The primary is going to take place in August. So we're very excited to have Missy join Compass Coffee Talk. Before entering public service, Missy served as an attorney with noted legal firm Holland and Hart. She also spent 17 years at Organic Valley as chief mission officer and general counsel, where she helped grow one of the largest farmer owned cooperatives in the country into one of the most recognized organic brands in the United States, all while advocating for family farms and rural communities along the way. In 2019, she became the first woman to lead the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation as CEO, where she worked closely with entrepreneurs and small businesses across the state, including helping launch initiatives like Main Street Bounce Back to revitalize downtown communities after the pandemic. And now, through her Unlock Wisconsin platform, which Missy will talk more about on our show, she's bringing together her experience in business, agriculture, and economic development as she runs for governor. Missy lives on a sheep farm outside of Viroqua, Wisconsin, with her husband Trip, who I also know well, is a wonderful human being, and their family. And with a whole lot of sheep grazing out there. Missy, welcome to Compass Coffee Talk. Really happy and honored to have you join us for this podcast.
Thank you so much, Steve. It's great to be here. I'm super excited to chat.
Well, our audience is entrepreneurs in the natural and organic products trade, business leaders, folks involved in the natural channel. I know you spent so many years with that. One thing that I learned reading about you a little bit is that after California, Wisconsin is probably the second leading state in organic farms and production. But also, just aside from organic, I mean, it is an agricultural state. So tell us a little bit about that. I mean, I didn't realize there was so much organic production. How do the two coexist?
Yeah, so in Wisconsin, the agriculture represents about half of our economy. It's a $120 billion industry in the state. It is huge. And organics is a really big part of that, especially where I live in the southwest part of the state. We've seen Organic Valley grow, but also, this whole food movement that is really driving just growing beautiful types of food and that's really a focus for Wisconsin. We celebrate our food. We love to get together. We love to hang out together and eat good food. But if you think about things like cranberries and potatoes, those are also massively grown in Wisconsin. Of course, we're the dairy state, but 60% of all cranberries in the world come from Wisconsin.
Wow. Now they're growing in wetlands, is that correct? Or are these dryland cranberries or?
These are bogs.
Aha.
Although in Wisconsin, oh, they call bogs is in Massachusetts. I'm trying to remember the name. It's something else in Wisconsin. But yeah, they're wet and grown. And it's been happening here for many, many years.
The bogs of Wisconsin.
Exactly.
Are you a Wisconsin native yourself?
I'm not. I grew up right outside of New York City and
Aha.
in a very populated area, and I now find myself living in a town of 4,000. So big difference.
Well, I grew up in New Jersey myself in the suburbs, but I'll take that Garden State moniker. Actually, my grandmom, taught me about gardening, and I've just always been um really passionate about food and agriculture. So, this boy from Jersey somehow got into organic food and farming on the communication side. So, it's really a great business. And I think we're promoting. What I noticed also is, I think, a recent study, I don't know how old it is, by University of Wisconsin, where they actually talk about how organic farming leads to stronger community vibrancy and economic development. Do you know much about that study that you can share with us that you're seeing?
Yeah, I think it really is indicative of where I live and have lived for over 20 years in the area around. It's called the Driftless region, and it's called that because the glaciers didn't come across, and so it was driftless. So it's very hilly. It is, not conducive to kind of big commodity production. And so we have lots of little farms and expert farmers, really Olympic farmers who know how to work with the conditions and be able to grow beautiful food. And so as a result, everyone who comes to the community is really participating in this local food movement. We have great co-ops. We have, a real knowledge of those, how you get food from the field or the garden to your dinner table and how you can enjoy it so much. So it's really a very much part of the culture. And when folks come to experience, even if they come to the Driftless for trout fishing, they get a chance to experience the beautiful food. And so it's really all tied together.
Um, so actually, the geography of the place is more amenable to smaller scale family held farms than large commodity farms. That's interesting. So because of the hilly nature, it's created still now. We know farms across the country are facing a lot of challenges. Organic farms, USDA, supports agriculture all across this country. We're seeing some of these programs get cut, not just on the organic side, but also on the conventional side. Um, I think farmers are facing challenges like they've never faced before, given a combination of policies in the past year between the tariff wars and now an actual don't you dare call it a war in Iran
Yeah.
war that we have. So these are absolutely impacting, I think, already struggling farmers. Missy, how is your platform going to address this?
Well, let me first agree, Steve, with what you're saying about, how farmers are really struggling and what they're seeing. But I want to say, I worked at Organic Valley a lot in the federal space with federal regulations and working to protect the integrity of the organic seal. And when I came to state government, I really expected to see a lot of conversation about agriculture and food and farming policy, and it really wasn't happening. It's really surprising to me that we take food and I guess it's not surprising, but I was hoping for better. We take food and farming so much for granted. And in our policy making, it often is just like, how do we keep the farmers quiet? How do we, throw some money at them, send them a check, and hopefully they'll stay quiet? And in Wisconsin, it used to be that a third of the legislature was farmers. And now, out of about 100 people, there's only two that are really farmers. And so the representation at the state level and at the federal level, I think, is really disheartening. And as a result, we see policies get passed that run over farmers, that don't take into consideration the impact that uh, the policies are having. Tariffs are a great example. I worked with dairy farmers of Wisconsin to try to increase global opportunity for selling cheese. And we were in China when Liberation Day happened, and we saw, the disruption to the global marketplace that is years in the making, right? Like you have to work a long time to create these relationships. Down the road, I saw, from where I live on our farm, we saw soybeans getting plowed under because there was no market for those soybeans last fall in the harvest. And now I'm talking to farmers who have literally, we just drove by $6.13 diesel. and they're trying to get in the field, right? We're at the beginning of May and they need to be out driving in the fields, getting planting done. And, it's costing them more right now than they've ever paid before. So it is really a devastating time. And as governor, one of the reasons I'm running is because I want to lift up our respect for our farmers and for the food they produce and make sure they're getting sustainable pay prices, and that when we do have policies, we consider the impact it's going to have on our farmers.
Yeah, I mean, the farmers are not looking for government bailouts. They're looking for free markets.
Right.
So the work you've done to establish, I mean, there you are in China working, and I do understand how long these international business relationships take. And then suddenly, it's like the whole thing's blown up with tariffs. I was actually speaking with a Japanese company, and just from the threat of tariffs, 25% tariffs on Japan last summer, they pulled out of doing some business. So tariffs are absolutely affecting farmers and small businesses. I mean, it's a really interesting economy out there, given, I think, the policies of our current administration. What made you want to run for governor?
I'm a glutton for punishment, apparently. I just having spent the time working at Organic Valley and then the time doing economic development for the state, I believe so much in entrepreneurship, in innovation, in the opportunities that, if you give people a little bit of support, what they can accomplish. And here in Wisconsin, we see entrepreneurs like the 7 entrepreneurs who started Organic Valley, or the entrepreneurs who invented Coumadin, which is a life-saving medicine out of UW-Madison. Like their stem cell research started here in Wisconsin. There is such a practical application of how to solve challenges that we're facing. And I want to continue to see that happen in Wisconsin. I want to, help the state grow. Someone just reminded me of the analogy of, buffaloes walk into a storm to get through it quicker. So I'm like, okay, I guess I'm a buffalo because I want to help us, get through this storm and come out the other side and learn from it, but, know how to do things better and be strong on, because of it.
Well, I would think actually working with a cooperative, you had to really find consensus, work with a constituency. And then similarly with the Economic Development Corporation, you're working with people across all industries and businesses. So that seems to me like a good experience for working with people and working with state policy. Um, Talk a little bit about the crop cooperative and the experience that that provided.
Yeah, and it's a great segue because it is people working together. If you think about what crop is, which is the business name for Organic Valley, it's farmers coming together and saying we're going to be stronger if we go to market together. And a farmer in Vermont is going to market with a farmer in Wisconsin, with a farmer in California, and figuring out, how do we manage ourselves? How do we work together? How do we both succeed and help each other succeed, I think is an incredible endeavor. And as I've been talking to folks on the trail and on the stump, I talk about, this is a long-term view. This is a generational mindset that the farmers have for the co-op. And they're thinking, 20 years out, 50 years out, how do I pass my farm on to the next generation? How do I make sure my family is successful? And when you're governing, you need to think with that mindset too. You can't just go from budget to budget or election to election. You need to think about things on a long-term basis. And I feel like my muscle was built during my time at Organic Valley, that long-term muscle and thinking about how you bring people together. And now more than ever, we need sane leadership. We need normal leadership. Like the bar is not that high, Steve, at this point. And I just want to bring my skills to the table and see if Wisconsin's excited to use them.
Well, you've got my support, and one of the questions I want to ask is, um, we the natural products industry that knows and loves you. We live all over the country, so we can't vote in Wisconsin. But how can we help you?
Yeah, I appreciate that. You said at the beginning it's a crowded primary. And so that means elevating my voice and making sure that people are hearing my message of supporting agriculture, supporting the good food movement is really critical. And, as we talk to folks, they're really excited about the work that I did with farmers and they really want to hear that message. It takes resources, it takes financial resources to do that. And for folks who are living in states that, maybe always go for a particular party, the investment in Wisconsin, can move the needle. And personally, I want to see Wisconsin stay Democratic. I think it's really important for protecting our elections, for protecting our country. So if folks, want to invest in a governor who will help move our whole country forward, as goes Wisconsin, so goes the rest of the country. I would love financial support and help there because we have a lot of work to do to pull this across the finish line. And every dollar in Wisconsin's being fought over 7 ways. So if I can bring resources in from my friends in the organic industry and the natural foods industry, that would be terrific. And just folks should know that we have an opportunity to have a governor who's really elevating the conversation around food and farming. And I'll go fight in Washington. I'll use my bully pulpit to talk about how important it is that we think about good food and taking care of our farmers and taking care of our own bodies and what we're putting in them.
Yeah, I do think it's important to support states like Wisconsin. You're a swing state in a great sense, right? So those that have interest in supporting organic agriculture in more progressive policies, it does make sense to support a candidate such as yourself that we know. Speaking of which, I know that Democratic governors have kind of faced a fair amount of headwinds in this administration. Um, how do you hope to work in a bipartisan way in a highly it doesn't seem like people want to talk to each other.
Yeah, yeah. The way I think about it is by approaching my race with saying, I want to build a strong economy. I want to help our farmers and our manufacturing industry. I'm talking across the aisle. And I have worked for the last 6 years with Republicans. I was part of the secretary process is getting confirmed. I was confirmed twice by the Republican Senate unanimously. Wisconsin has been very divided, but at the same time, I've been able to get a lot done on the economic development side because I've worked across the aisle and I'll continue to do that. And, working with the federal government is a real challenge at this point. We all know what it's like. We know that Democratic governors don't necessarily have a welcome mat, but you find the ways to work with folks. And, as I worked for 1,600 farmers, sitting here today, Steve, I couldn't tell you who was Republican and who was Democrat. I might have an idea, but you find ways to talk to people that doesn't, pull out the what color shirt are you wearing, and you just find common ground.
I think that speaks a lot for your integrity that you were confirmed unanimously by a Republican held majority in the state. Um, as things do get more partisan, I mean, I think again, that speaks to your work. What are you most proud of in terms of A, with Organic Valley, and B, with the Economic Development Corporation?
Well, I'm super proud that I was able to work on an individual basis with farmers and know that, the things we were doing at OV helped them stay on their farms. And, it's not just a question of like, can the farmer stay there? It's a question of making sure that the whole supply chain works. It's a question of making sure when consumers are paying for that milk and opening it on their kitchen tables that it's not spoiled, that it's the best quality product. So that's getting everybody on board with that, all the employees, all the farmers working together. Like that's a massive effort and, continues to be very successful today and continues to grow. At WEDC, I'm really proud that I worked with a lot of communities that previously had not interacted with the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation. Underserved communities, our tribal nations, these are all places where the most opportunity around economic development can happen. And, just a little bit of resources can make a big difference. And so we really leaned in on working with underserved communities and making sure that they knew the state had their back.
I've worked with, you bring up tribal communities. I've worked with a number of indigenous leaders in the industrial hemp space. Um, Tell me a little bit about your work with the tribal communities in Wisconsin. I know they're very strong.
Yeah, well, the previous administration under Scott Walker had really ignored them. And so Governor Evers made a directive that each of the secretaries would sit down with all of the tribes at least once a year in what was called a consultation process. As sovereign nations, it was a meeting of equals and not anything else. But we took that one step further and met with each of the tribes individually because each tribe has a different economic development strategy and impact on the state. And so understanding, what their priorities were and how we might be able to support them was a key piece for me. And I want to continue those relationships as I talk with tribal members now. They know that I was leaning in to both think about how we could help with their strategies, but also recognizing that they have a really big impact on our state's economy. In Wisconsin, in a number of our different counties, the tribal nations are the biggest employers and are really important in our rural communities for keeping those economies going. And, recognizing that I think is something that others hadn't done before. And it was like, yeah, you guys are really important. And we appreciate what you bring to the state.
Um, I'm hoping that is being well received. Are there many tribes in Wisconsin?
There are 11 federally recognized tribes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Each a sovereign nation. So
Each
you're
a
almost
sovereign
having to
nation.
negotiate with 11 different countries, all in state.
Well, and each with really incredible stories about, some of the Ojibwe were almost refugees from the East Coast, and some of the tribes have been here for thousands of years, and so really interesting to understand that historical story, and always I'm just always amazed at the patience that they have to continue talking to us, basically, and not
Well,
just
we kind
wanting
of
to
have to
slam the
talk to
door.
each we have to talk to each other. I mean, we're all living in the same country.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. But I wouldn't blame
So,
them for being a little irritated at times. So,
well, America has, a bloody history,
yeah, for sure, for sure. Sadly, we
but
do.
there's also um, the great promise of this city on the hill. So we are dealing with both, and somehow that's the part of the human condition. It seems to me.
Yeah, and
Um,
all you can do is listen and try to find solutions and try to make sure that everyone is succeeding.
so the primary is in August. You've got half of May, June, July. When is it in August? Is it 3 months from now, basically
Yeah,
90 days?
we just had the 90-day mark. It's August 11th.
So, what does it look like from here to the primary in terms of being victorious in the primary so that we can help support you into November?
Yeah, it's a full sprint right now, and just going to as many places as possible, all the chicken dinners you can imagine to shake hands and introduce myself to folks. And then, doing social media and going up on TV, all of these different pieces of the puzzle. So I've got a camp.
When's the state fair?
Oh, the state fair is usually
And
the first or second week in August. So, but there'll be a lot of state fairs. There's dairy breakfasts in June, like all sorts of stuff. It's great. I did it as secretary. I traveled all around the state, meeting people and talking with them about what they saw as opportunities and challenges. And it's pretty much the same right now, just talking with folks, and people are really tired of politics. They're tired of division, and so offering them a road forward, and reflecting on my experience at Organic Valley, which is a crown jewel for Wisconsin. As soon as I say Organic Valley, people are like, "Oh, I love Organic Valley. I got it in my fridge." I think that I'm very, very optimistic about this. It takes resources, and I appreciate your having me tell folks that I can use financial resources, but we continue
Where
to.
can they donate? Is it missyforgovernor.com?
That's it. Yep. Missyforgovernor.com is the best place to go.
Missy,
Yep.
missyforgovernor.com.
Yeah.
Okay, audience, go out there. And what I find interesting, I'm not sure if anyone from our industry, and please correct me if you know, has run for a major office like this before.
No, I don't. I think I'm the first. Yeah.
Well,
John Tester was certainly a senator as an organic farmer.
he was an
Um,
organic farmer.
Yeah, yeah, but I think
Mhm.
from the industry side of things, one thing we didn't mention for your listeners is I was president of the Organic Trade Association for a few years. So, really, I was deeply, deeply involved in growing the organic industry, and I know that folks are continuing that work, and we all need to continue this movement. And I really see the opportunity to have a governor of Wisconsin who knows the organic food industry as the next step, the next level for where we need to go in order to continue moving forward.
Well, thank you for mentioning that. Yeah, you served as vice president of OTA for 6 years. Also, a board member of the Environmental Working Group. Ken Cook is a hero of mine. I got to work with him at the Organic Center, and that was for 4 years. And Environmental Working Group is doing so much to educate consumers, citizens about the value of organic. Their Dirty Dozen and Clean 15. If you want to know what are the fresh fruits and vegetables that you should be considering choosing as organic, check out EWG's Dirty Dozen and Clean 15. So that brings to mind, the whole issue with glyphosate. To me, our farms are national security. Glyphosate is not national security, and yet I know our farmers need some answers to weed control, and yet we are seeing more demand and more growth in organic. So it seems like it's disproportionate. We're seeing more support for these huge chemical inputs, and yet organic is taking up more market share, and we're seeing support for that cut back state-wise, also federalized. So can you speak to that a little bit? As I think, pesticides, it's why I got into organic 40 years ago to begin.
Yeah, I think what I would say, Steve, is it's kind of the danger we see with the MAHA movement, right? We agree with the good food movement, but seeing decisions made that aren't based on science is such a huge challenge. And certainly, saying glyphosate is a national security, there was something more hidden behind the curtain on that one. And the I think co-opting of so much of the good food movement's messaging on behalf of um, Maha, and we all know that they're not the same thing. And it's really disheartening. To me, it is an ongoing effort to hold on to power. And there's backlash around efforts around or increasing organic food and increasing the market. People are, those in power are freaking out and want to be able to sell their chemicals. And we just need to keep growing. And I really think that what I've learned at working at Organic Valley is the way to change the system is to just keep doing what you're doing and get people on board with what you're doing. And ultimately, you crowd out the old system and you grow your new system. And I think that's what we need to keep doing.
Hmm. Yeah, I have similar feelings about the Maha movement. I felt like the natural and organic products industry has always been about making America healthy. making America healthy again. It's that again word where I'm like, well, the reason the natural industry came to be is because of processed foods and pesticides. The part that I find ironic a bit is, saying glyphosate is for national security and then cutting school lunch programs,
Right.
because that's also important for farmers to be able to have a market. So,
Yeah.
the government does a lot to support agriculture in many positive ways in our country. But we are seeing a lot of cutbacks on that. And then, I think the Maha movement drew a lot of people interested in good food and health over to end up voting for an administration that's now just kind of cutting those very same things. And I totally agree with you. It is not science based.
Yeah. And the cuts to SNAP benefits, here in Wisconsin, 1 in 8 people are using SNAP benefits. And that, that's a direct line of sight for support for the farmers. A lot of revenue comes from SNAP benefits. And we should be focusing on the fact that 1 in 8 need that. How do we change that game rather
Mm-hmm.
than fighting over cutting what they need in order to be able to feed their families?
Yeah, I think hunger in America, I mean, we shouldn't have it. And my philosophy I learned from John Mackey, founder of Whole Foods Market, actually is conscious capitalism. Capitalism does not have to be ruthless.
Yeah.
It can be conscious. It can serve the community and still serve not just the shareholders, but all the stakeholders. And I know you know this from your work, but speak to this stakeholder versus shareholder thing, because I think that's key for a policymaker, a leader wanting to serve as governor.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really interesting. I'll use the example of the environment. Folks ask me, what's your stance on protecting the environment? And I explain that I spent 17 years working at the nexus of the environment and the economy, and farmers who were farming in conjunction with the environment, but also successful financially. And so it is absolutely possible to happen. It's very difficult when you're working on 90-day, quarterly reports. And I think that's the difference of a cooperative or a family-owned business, is that you're not working on that 90-day turnaround. And we're seeing again and again how that is driving decision making that is really false and ultimately injurious to the company and to our overall system. And so I think that concept of conscious capitalism and understanding who are the stakeholders that make your business successful, rather than just, oh, I need my shareholders to, I need to look good for my shareholders at the end of June.
Hmm. Well, I think it may be a longer growth curve, so to speak, but I think it's a more sustainable growth curve to serve stakeholders versus just shareholders.
And I think
Those are
the
your workers, your community, your vendors, your supply chain, every part of it.
Yeah, and I think the amazing thing is, the upcoming generations understand that. They see it. They're learning it. And, I see myself, Steve, as a bridge between now and when my kids are in charge, and, the ability for the next generation to fix our mistakes. I just want to be able to make sure we get there. And, I think
Mhm.
it's a real challenge. But I am so optimistic for the future and for making the changes that we need to.
Well, Missy, you've always been a straight shooter that I've known, and we absolutely need to bring honesty back into government, because right now the attitude is they're all lying. So, that's another question: is how do you foster a trust in government again? And that's a big ask, but you're going to be serving in government if it all works out like we want it to. How do you build that trust back?
Yeah, it's very difficult. And what I see happening in Wisconsin as I traveled around as secretary, are people meeting at the community level to say, what can we get done to protect our community, to help our community? What project can we done? Can we build a playground? Can we take down that dilapidated building? And once folks start to see a win there, they, okay, what's the next project that we're going to do? And Steve showed up with 10 volunteers. So I want Steve to come. I don't care who he's married to. I don't care who he loves. Like, he showed up with volunteers. That's what I see happening in Wisconsin. And I think unbeknownst to Washington, they are fostering almost a civic resistance because people are like, okay, I can't deal with what's happening there. I'm going to create my own opportunities here. And I think if government can show up with a little bit of resources and help them accomplish what their priorities are, they'll start to trust again. They'll start to see like, okay, we need to have government here to help us get things done. But I really think we need to prioritize what communities need and listen to what they're saying rather than be like, oh, I'm gonna, come in with my big decisions. And it should be local. It should be, how can we make our decisions that are best for our communities because they know what they need.
Have you had much pressure for gerrymandering in your state since that seems to be what's happening ahead of the midterms?
Well, we had very, very gerrymandered state um, legislative lines. In Wisconsin, we are very 50-50, right? Every election is 1 or 2 points. And yet our legislature was about 75% Republican, 25% Democrat. So we have now been able to have fair maps implemented, and we're going to see a change around the legislature in our next election. But at the federal level, we still have very gerrymandered maps. We have 8 congressional districts. 6 of them are held by Republicans, 2 by Democrats. And there continues to be an effort to redraw those maps just to make them fair, not to change the game, to make it 2 Democrats or 6 Democrats and 2 Republicans. We just need to probably get to 4 and 4, and those efforts are underway. So we don't have the big fights that you're seeing in Virginia or Indiana. And really, I think now that we have fair maps, we see like we should just fair is the right way to go on this.
We've talked a lot. We're starting to get toward a wind up here. As a business person and a policymaker, um, what do you see on the horizon for small businesses in the natural channel, small businesses overall?
Well, I was able to work with a bunch of small businesses here in Wisconsin, lots and lots of small businesses, but especially in the natural foods industry. We saw beverage companies coming up, and what I was excited about is those companies were getting investment from venture capital. They were getting investment from angel investors who are helping them grow. And so I think there's a real opportunity for businesses that are growing in the natural food space to innovate, to think about how can I take a product to market and to find local investment to help support that and help them grow. And I think smart states like Wisconsin are recognizing that tech isn't necessarily the only place to invest. Food and beverage and manufacturing are in our DNA here in Wisconsin. We do a lot of food processing and things like that. So I see a real opportunity for small businesses based on changing the game when it comes to our food and how we look at it to be a real opportunity.
Back to food business. You can't eat AI.
Right.
What haven't I asked you that you'd like to talk about? Anything in particular?
We've covered a lot, Steve. I can't think of anything off the top of my head, except that, I'm super proud of everything that I learned during my time in the organic and natural foods industry. And I think, what we talked about working together and democratic principles and acknowledging each other's needs and, thinking about how do you, make sure that someone has options like organic or gluten-free? How do you, make sure that we recognize that what people put in their bodies impacts them? And all of that is a mindset that I would take into being governor and thinking about, how do you make sure you're thinking about everybody who's at the table? And, the analogy of being at the table comes from all eating together and having food together. And it all seems like a natural line for me.
What's your secret to self-care right now? Because you're running not just a marathon, but a sprint now. And then as governor, it's not going to get easier. So a little bit about your own, like, self-care in all this.
Well, I spent Mother's Day full day in the garden getting, I have boxes of dahlias in my basement because I hadn't launched for governor when I put them away last year. So I got those planted, and I try to take my dogs out for a walk, but self-care is definitely not on the top of the list these days when you're running for governor, but it's important. And if I can get out in the woods and take the dogs for a walk, I feel successful.
And I hope you're getting good sleep. Sleep's a superpower.
Yeah, sleep is definitely a superpower, and we're working on it.
Well, Missy, again, your website, missyforgovernor.com.
That's it.
And is that where else can people go? Anywhere else if they have questions or if they want to support you? That's the place.
Yeah, and finding me on Instagram, Missy for WI is my handle. Instagram, Facebook, like anybody.
LinkedIn as well.
Yep, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Any of those places help elevate my name, and if you can follow me on those places, that would be awesome. Thank you for saying that. I need to continue to remember to remind people of that, but they can see what we're doing. We're gonna have some pictures of the sheep and the donkeys here soon, so at least it'll be entertaining.
Well, folks, this is an important election coming up. As Missy said earlier, as goes Wisconsin, so goes the nation. So there are lots of ways that we, as leaders in the natural and organic and regenerative agriculture space, can support Missy, who spent a career building up organic food and agriculture in our country. Go to missyforgovernor.com, donate, and you've got our endorsement. Thank you so much, Missy Hughes, for being with us today. And
Thanks,
thanks
Steve.
all of you for coming to Compass Coffee Talk.
Thanks, Steve. I appreciate it so much.
All right. Bye now, everyone.